On a world where the sky bled crimson and the rivers ran black with ash, Ilara stood alone in the ruins of her home. The wind howled through broken spires that once sang with the voices of her ancestors. Now silent, now empty, she wore no crown, no robes, only a tattered cloak stitched from the wings of fallen sky serpents. Her silver eyes scanned the horizon. Not for hope, but for signs of pursuit she knew they would come. Her father, King Orlan, did not forgive betrayal, and what she had done was worse than betrayal. It was mercy. Her only companion lay coiled at her feet. Kael the Void Dragon, no bigger than a hunting hound, yet his presence filled the air with a low hum that made the dust tremble. His scales shifted from deep violet to near black depending on his mood. Right now he was anxious, his tail flicked and his nostrils flared. Sensing what Ilara already knew, they were out of time. They had fled Varelli's 3 nights past when the royal guard came for her, not with chains, but with silence, a silence that meant death. She had slipped through the star gardens, the ancient pathways only the royal bloodline could walk, and reached the hidden hangar beneath the observatory. There she found the last of the old skiffs, a relic. From the age before war, its hull scarred, but its heart still beating. Kael had leapt aboard without hesitation, and they shot into the void just as the citadel exploded behind them. Now they drifted on the edge of known space, their ship damaged there, supplies low and their destination uncertain. Ilara had heard whispers of a place far from the Dominion's reach. A human colony tucked behind asteroid belts and forgotten nebulae, a place called Bracken Ridge. She did not trust humans. They were young, loud, and reckless, but they were also unpredictable, and sometimes unpredictability was the only shield left. The skiff groaned as it entered the atmosphere of Bracken Ridge, fire licking its sides. Kael hissed and pressed himself against Ilara's legs. She held him close, whispering words in the old tongue, words that calmed storms and soothed dying stars. The ship hit the ground hard, rolling twice before coming to rest in a field of rust-colored grass. Smoke curled from its frame and the air smelled of burnt metal and wet earth. For a long while, Ilara did not move. She listened. The world here was different. No hum of crystal spires, no echo of ancestral songs, only windbirds and the distant rumble of machinery. Then footsteps, slow, careful, measured. A woman appeared at the edge of the field. She wore a faded blue jumpsuit stained with oil and grease. Her dark hair tied back in a messy knot. Her hands were rough but steady. She carried no weapon, only a tool belt and a curious look in her brown eyes. She did not speak, did not shout, did not run. Instead, she walked closer until she stood just outside the smoke ring. "You alive?" She asked, her voice low and calm. Ilara said nothing but nodded. The woman glanced at Kael, who growled, "Softly, he with you?" Another nod. The woman exhaled. "Okay." Then she turned and gestured, "Follow me." Ilara hesitated, but Kael nudged her hand with his snout as if to say, "Trust her just this once." They followed the woman to a small outpost built from scrap. Metal and old shipping containers, solar panels lined the roof, and wires snaked across the ground like vines. Inside it was warm, and cluttered tools hung on every wall, and half-built machines sat on workbenches. The woman poured water into a bowl and set it down for Kael, then handed Ilara a dry cloth named Lila. She said, "I fix things, mostly broken ships, sometimes broken people." Ilara studied her. Lila did not ask where she came from, or what she was. She did not stare too long or flinch at Kael's shifting scales. She simply moved with quiet purpose. "You can stay the night," Lila added, "but tomorrow you'll need to move on. Dominion patrols have been sniffing around lately." Ilara finally spoke, her voice soft like wind through glass leaves. "Thank you." Lila nodded and went back to her work, tightening bolts on a drone that hovered near the ceiling. That night, Ilara sat by the window watching the stars, unfamiliar constellations blinking in patterns she did not know. Kael slept curled at her feet, his breathing slow and deep. She thought of her father, his face hard as obsidian, his voice colder than the void between galaxies. He had ordered the destruction of 3 human colonies because they refused to bow to his will. She had pleaded with him, told him war was not the answer, that the humans were not their enemy. He had called her weak. No, she was an exile with nothing but a dragon and a stranger's kindness. The next morning, Lila was already outside repairing the skiff's thruster. "Alright, this thing's older than my grandma's stories," she muttered. But I think I can get it flying again. Ilara stepped beside her. You do not have to. I know, Lila said. But if you're running from the Dominion, you'll need more than luck. They worked. In silence, Ilara handing tools, Lila welding seams. The sun climbed high and sweat beaded on Lila's forehead. Cale watched from the shade, his eyes tracking every movement. By midday, the skiff purred to life, its engines humming with a steady rhythm. Should hold for a few jumps, Lila said, wiping her hands on her pants. Ilara looked at her. Why are you helping me? Lila shrugged. You looked like you needed it. That was all, but as Ilara turned to leave, Lila spoke again. If they catch you, they'll kill you. I know, and you're Dragon. I know. Lila hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, a tracker. Take this. If you're ever in real trouble, activate it. I can't promise I'll come, but I'll try. Ilara took it and tucked it into her cloak. Thank you, Lila. Just be careful out there. Ilara nodded and climbed into the skiff. Cale leapt in after her. The hatch closed and the ship lifted off. Lila stood in the field watching until it vanished into the clouds. For days they drifted from system to system, always one step ahead of Dominion scouts, but their luck ran out near the Helix belt. A patrol cruiser locked onto their signal and opened fire. The skiff shuddered, alarms blaring as hull integrity failed. Ilara wrestled the controls trying to find cover, but there was none, only open space and death. Then a voice crackled over the comm. This is Lila of Bracken Ridge. If you can hear me, punch in these coordinates. Now Ilara did not question. She entered the numbers. Space twisted and the skiff dropped. Into a hidden pocket between asteroid clusters, the cruiser passed overhead. Unaware, Lila's voice returned, quieter now. Come back. So they did. This time Lila was ready. She had reinforced the outpost, added shields and hidden sensors. You're stuck with me now, she said with a tired smile. Ilara did not argue. Weeks passed, they fell into a rhythm. Lila worked on machines. Ilara tended to Cale, who grew larger each day, his wings now brushing the ceiling. His eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They spoke little but understood much. Then came the night the raiders struck. Not Dominion, not Royal Guard, but mercenaries hired by someone who wanted Ilara dead. They came in the dark, silent and fast. Lila was outside checking the perimeter when the first shot rang out. Ilara woke to the sound of gunfire. Cale roared and smashed through the wall, leaping into the fray. Lila fought with a pulse rifle she had built from scrap. Her aim sharp, her movements precise, but there were too many. Ilara joined her, weaving through shadows, striking with speed no human could match, but a stun bolt caught her in the side and she fell. A raider stood over her, blade raised. Then Lila fired. The pulse round hit the raider square in the chest. He dropped. Lila ran to Ilara, helped her up. You okay? Ilara nodded, but her breath came in short gasps. Back inside, they barricaded the doors. Cale stood guard, his growl enough to keep anyone from approaching. Lila checked Ilara's wound. It was not deep, but the toxin in the bolt made her weak. You saved my life, Ilara whispered. Lila shrugged, just returning the favor. But Ilara knew it was more than that. That night, as the moon rose high over Bracken Ridge, Ilara made a decision. She went to her pack and pulled out a small object wrapped in star silk. It was a shard no bigger than a thumb, glowing with a soft blue light. This is a piece of Varelli's, she said. Our world's soul. It lives in all of us. Lila frowned. What are you doing? Ilara held it out. Take it. Lila stepped back. I can't. You can, she said. It will protect you. It will help you hear what others cannot, but no buts. Ilara pressed the shard into Lila's palm. The moment it touched her skin, it melted into her flesh, light spreading up her arm until it reached her heart. Lila gasped, her eyes wide, her body trembling. What did you do? I gave you a gift outside. The wind changed direction. Far away across the void, King Orlan felt the shift. His daughter had shared the world's soul with a human. His face darkened with fury. The war had just begun. The shard burned inside Lila, not with pain, but with a strange warmth, like sunlight underwater. At first, she thought she was dreaming. Colors moved at the edge of her vision. Sounds stretched and bent, words she had never heard before, whispered in. Her mind machines around her hummed with new voices. The old generator in the corner no longer just clanked. It sighed with relief when she oiled its gears. The drone hovering near the ceiling chirped a soft greeting every morning. Ilara watched her closely in those first days, not with worry, but with something like pride at his waking. she said one evening as they sat by the fire. Kale curled around them like a living wall, waking what Lila asked. Your mind, your senses, the part of you that listens, Leela. Did not understand, but she felt it every time she touched a wire or looked at the stars. Something answered. Then the nightmares started. Not hers, but someone else's. She saw cities burning under twin suns, heard screams in a language she did not know, yet understood, felt the weight of a crown made of bone and sorrow. Lara knew what they were. The king is searching, she said. He can feel the shard through you. Lila sat up straighter. So he knows where I am. Not yet. But soon. They packed what they could. That night left the outpost behind and moved deeper into the wilds of Bracken Ridge. Lila did not ask why. She already knew staying meant death for them all. They traveled by foot for days through forests of ironwood and rivers that glowed faintly. At dusk, Kale flew above, hidden in the cloud cover, his shadow. Their only warning of danger. One evening as they rested in a cave, Lila spoke. What happens if he finds you? Solara stared into the fire for a long time, then said, he will take the shard back, and you are part of it now. He cannot take it without taking you. Leela swallowed hard. So I dare you fight, how I will teach you. And so the lessons began. Alara showed her how to move without sound, how to read the wind for hidden threats, how to listen to the silence between heartbeats. She taught her the old ways, not with weapons, but with awareness. A true warrior does not strike first, she said. She strikes last because she never needed to strike at all. Lila practiced every day, her body aching, her mind racing, but the shard helped it. Sharpened her focus, made her faster, stronger. Kale grew too. His wings now wide enough to block out the sun. His breath cold enough to freeze metal. His eyes golden and wise. One night Lila woke to find him watching. How you understand now, don't you? He seemed to say. She did. Then came the signal. A faint pulse in the shard, a ripple from deep space. Alara felt it. Tooth. Dominion is moving, she said. They are gathering at the relay station near the Helix Nebula. Why? Because they know you have the shard. They think you stole it. I didn't steal it. No, but they do not care. Truth is not their concern. Only control. Leela stood. We have to stop them. Alara shook her head. We cannot fight a fleet, but we can listen. They built a small receiver from scrap parts. Lila's hands moving with new certainty, guided by the shard's hum. They tuned it to the Dominion's frequency and waited. For 3 nights, nothing. On the 4th, a message came through encrypted. But the shard unraveled. It like thread, it was a summons. King Orlan to Dominion High Command. The human abomination carries a fragment of the Varelian world soul. She must be eliminated on sight. The gift she received is a corruption, a disease. Do not let it spread. Lila's blood ran cold. They think I'm a monster. Alara placed a hand on her shoulder. They fear what they do not understand, but there was more. Buried in the message was a location, a schedule, a plant. The Dominion was preparing a full assault on the outer colonies, and Orlan had agreed to lead it. Why would he do that? Because he believes humans are weak. Because he thinks your existence insults his bloodline. Lila clenched her fists. So we let him. No, Alara said, we show him he is wrong. How? By going to the relay station. Are you insane, perhaps? But it is the only place we can intercept the next message, the only place we can learn his true plan. Leela looked at Kale, who gave a low rumble of agreement. Fine, she said. But we do it my way. They spent the next week preparing. Lila modified a stolen scout ship, its hull painted dull gray, its engines muffled with heat dampeners. Ilara wove cloaking runes into its frame using starlight and memory. Kale memorized the station's layout from stolen schematics, his mind now sharp, enough to hold entire maps in perfect detail. The night before they left, Lila stood outside staring at the stars. You do not have to do this, Ilara said softly. Yes, I do. If he destroys those colonies, thousands will die because of me. It is not your fault, maybe. Not, but it is my fight now. Ilara nodded. Then we go together. The journey took 2 days. They flew silent and dark, avoiding patrol routes. The shard in Lila's chest pulsed gently, like a second heartbeat guiding them. The relay station hung in orbit, above a dead moon, its towers bristling with antennas and defense turrets. Lila brought the ship in, low hugging. The moon's shadow. Kale stayed aboard, ready to burn a path if needed. Alara and Lila slipped inside through a maintenance hatch, their movements smooth, their breaths quiet. Inside the station was cold and sterile. Lights flickered in long corridors, empty except for the hum of machines. They found the core chamber a vast room filled with glowing data crystals, each one holding messages from across the galaxy. Lila approached the main console, her fingers hovering over the keys. The shard flared. Suddenly, images flooded her mind. Not just messages, but plans. Orlan had not just allied with the Dominion, he had promised them something more. He would give them the heart of Virelis itself, the source of all world soul, in exchange for total control of the sector. But that would kill his own world, unless he no longer cared. Lila gasped, pulling back. What is it? Ilara asked. He is going to drain Virelis. Dry, he will turn it into a weapon. Ilara's face went pale. That is forbidden even among our darkest histories. We have to stop him. How? Lila looked around, then at the console. We send a message of our own. Using the shard, she tapped into the network. Not to steal, but to plant a false order. A command from a fake Dominion admiral recalling all fleets for emergency drills. It would not hold long, but it might buy time. As she worked, alarms blared. They found you. Ilara drew a blade of solid light. Go, Lila, I will. Hold them. No, we go together. Lila finished the upload and yanked the core crystal from the console. What are you doing? If they trace the message, they will find us this way. They find nothing. She stuffed the crystal into her pack run. They sprinted through the corridors, blaster fire lighting the walls behind them. Kale met them at the hatch, roaring as he unleashed a wave of freezing breath, sealing the tunnel behind them. They reached the ship and blasted away just as the station's defenses powered up. Back in open space, Lila examined the crystal. It is more than a message, she said. It holds something else. Ilara leaned closer. What a map to what? The Forge Moon, where Orlan builds his war engines. Lila looked at her, eyes wide. He is not just planning a war. He is building something new, something worse. Ilara nodded. And now we know where they returned to Bracken Ridge. Not to the old outpost, but to a hidden valley Lila had found weeks before. There she gathered survivors, others who had lost homes to Dominion. Raids, pilots, engineers, medics, all with fire in their eyes and nowhere left to run. She showed them the crystal. This is our chance, she said. They listened, because for the first time someone offered not just hope, but a target. Ilara watched from the ridge. Kale beside her. You have become their leader, she said. Lila shook her head. No, I am just the one who listens. But Ilara knew better. The gift had changed her, not just her body, but her spirit, and the war had found its voice, far away on his obsidian throne. King Orlan felt the relay station fall silent. He did not rage. He smiled. Let them come. He whispered, let them see what awaits at the Forge Moon. And in the dark between stars, something ancient stirred, waiting, watching, ready. The Forge Moon hung in the void like a scarred fist, its surface pitted with craters and veined with rivers of molten metal. It was not a natural world, but a machine built by King Orlan's ancestors to birth warships, engines of ruin and weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. Lila stood on the bridge of the stolen Dominion frigate, her hands resting on the console. The shard in her chest pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a war drum counting down to battle. Around her, the crew moved with quiet urgency. Pilots checked flight paths, engineers ran diagnostics on shield emitters. Medics prepared kits not for healing, but for triage. They were not soldiers. Not really, just people who had lost too much to walk away. Ilara stood beside, her cloaked in shadow, her silver eyes fixed on the moon. You do not have to do this, Lila said softly. Ilara turned. I made my choice when I gave you the shard. Lila nodded, but her throat felt tight. Kale lay coiled in the cargo bay below, his golden eyes closed but his mind wide awake, linked to the ship's systems through the shard's echo. He could feel every bolt, every wire, every heartbeat aboard. The plan was simple. Strike fast, strike hard. They would not land, not in the usual way. Instead, they would fly straight into the moon's main vent, the one that fed heat to the core. Crazy, Lila had said when Ilara first suggested it. Yes, Ilara replied. But Orlan will not expect it. Now they were minutes away. Lila activated the comm. Ships hold formation. On my mark, a chorus of voices answered. Ready. Ready, ready. She took a breath mark. The fleet of patched-together ships shot forward like arrows. Dominion turrets swiveled, tracking them, but too slow. The Forge Moon was built to face outward, not inward. They hit the vent at full speed, the frigate shuddering as it plunged into darkness. Inside the moon, it was a maze of fire and steel walkways hung over chasms, where liquid metal churned and machines the size of buildings ground gears that screamed like dying beasts. Lila guided the ship through it all, her hands steady, her mind sharp. The shard showing her paths no scanner could see them. The alarms blared. They are here, royal hunters. Shadow walkers clad in bone armor, their faces hidden behind masks that wept black oil. They moved like smoke slipping through vents and walls. Ilara drew her blade of light. Stay with the ship, she told Lila, but go. Ilara leapt into the corridor, her form vanishing into the gloom. Lila gritted her teeth and kept flying. Deeper, deeper, until they reached the heart chamber, a vast sphere of rotating rings. Each one humming with raw power. At the center floated the forge core, a pulsing orb of red energy. That is what we came for. Lila ordered the crew to plant charges, but as they moved, the wall shifted. A voice echoed through the chamber. You always were too clever for your own good daughter. King Orlan stepped from the shadow. She was taller than Lila remembered, his presence bending the air around him, his eyes like frozen stars. Where is Ilara? Lila asked, suffering. He said as she should. Lila's hands tightened on her rifle. You do not understand what you carry. He said the shard is not a gift. It is a seed, and you are its soil. But soil must be tilled, broken, made ready. I am not your field. No, you are something worse, a mistake. He raised a hand and the forge core flared. Heat washed over them. Lila's crew fell to their knees. But Lila stood. The shard burned bright. She looked at Orlan not with fear but with pity. You are afraid? His face twisted. Of what of us? He laughed, a dry sound like cracking stone. Humans are insects. You burn bright for a moment, then vanish. Maybe, she said, but we leave scars. She triggered the charges. The explosion did not come. Orlan smiled. The core is shielded. Then, Kale roared from the vent above. The dragon dropped like a comet. His wings spread, his maw open. Cold fire erupted, not flame but frost, so deep it turned metal to dust. The shield flickered. Lila did not wait. She ran for the core. Orlan moved to stop her, but Ilara appeared from the smoke, blood on her face, her blade broken but her eyes blazing. You will not touch her. Father and daughter clashed. Light met shadow. While Lila reached the core, she placed her hands on its surface. The shard answered. Memories flooded. Her, no, just hers. But Virelis is the birth of stars, the fall of empires, the song of the world's soul, and one truth. The core was alive. It did not want this war. Lila closed her eyes and listened. Then she sang, not with her voice but with her will. The core responded. Ring spun faster. Energy built. Orlan turned too late. Run, he shouted, but it was over. The forge moon began to collapse. Lila sprinted back to the ship, Ilara limping behind her. Kyle covering their retreat with waves of freezing breath. They barely made it out before the moon imploded, folding in on itself until only a black ember remained drifting in the void. On the bridge, Lila collapsed. Gasping, Ilara knelt beside her. You did it. No, she whispered. We did. But as they watched the ember fade, a message came through the comm, not from the Dominion. From Orlan, his face filled the screen. Calm, cold, smiling. You think this changes anything? He said the forge moon was only the beginning. Then the transmission cut. Lila looked at Ilara. What does he mean? Ilara's voice was quiet. He has something worse. Kyle let out a low, mournful sound far away across the stars. The silence began to spread. Not sound, but thought. Entire colonies went quiet. No calls for help, no distress signals. Just stillness. Lila checked the shard. It showed her the truth. The king had unleashed the silence, a wave of anti-consciousness that erased minds, left bodies standing but empty. Only those touched by the shard resisted. They were the last sparks, and Orlan was coming for them. Not with ships, not with armies, but with nothingness itself. Lila stood. We cannot hide. No, Ilara said, we must fight. But how do you fight silence? You answer with voice. Lila turned to her crew. We are not done. They nodded because the gift was not just power, it was purpose. And they would not let it die. Not while they still breathed. Not while they still remembered. Somewhere in the dark, Kale's golden eyes glowed, waiting for the next command. The war had changed, and so had they. The silence spread like frost across Glass One. Moment a colony bustled with life. The next it stood empty. Bodies still warm, eyes open but minds gone. No fear, no pain, just nothing. Leela watched it happen from orbit. Her hands clenched around the edge. Of the console, the shard in her chest burning cold, she had seen 3 worlds fall this way. No explosions, no battles, just stillness. Alara stood beside her, face pale. Not from fear but from grief. He has crossed the final line. Ilara whispered the silence. Was forbidden even in the oldest wars. It does not kill, it erases. Leela swallowed hard. So they are not dead, worse, they are forgotten even by themselves. Kyle lay curled in the corner of the bridge. His golden eyes dim, his usual hum gone quiet, as if even he feared making sound. They had retreated to the void rifts, a place where space folded in on itself and time frayed at the edges. Few ships dared enter the rifts, most vanished never to return. But the silence could not follow here. The laws of reality bent too sharply for it to hold shape, still they could not stay. Every hour more colonies fell. Leela gathered what remained of the resistance, a handful of ships, a few dozen souls, all that was left of the outer rim. They met in the cargo bay of the frigate now named Echo after Lila's new title. She did not like the name, but it stuck. The Echo was the one who remembered when others could not. Now she stood before them, her voice low but clear. We cannot fight the silence with weapons, she said. It does not care about shields or fire. Then how do we stop it? A pilot asked. We remind people they exist. Howlera stepped forward. The shard is a piece of the world's soul. It carries memory, life voice. If we can amplify it, we can push back the silence. Amplify it. How Lila looked at Kaylee. Has changed since the Forge Moon. His fire is not just cold, it carries resonance. Alara nodded. The dragon is no longer just a beast. He is a vessel like you, so we use him as a signal. Not a signal, a song. They spent days preparing. Lila worked with engineers to build a harmonic array powered by the shard and tuned to Kale's breath. Alara wove starlight into filaments that wrapped around the array, humming with ancient patterns. Kale let them work, his body still, his mind focused. When it was ready, they tested it on a dead colony. They flew low over empty streets. Lila activated the array. Kale exhaled. A wave of sound rolled out, not loud but deep, like the first note of creation. Windows rattled, lights flickered, and then a woman in the street blinked. She looked around, confused, then terrified. She screamed. But she remembered it worked only for a few blocks, only for a few minutes, but it worked. Back in the rifts, Lila studied the data. We need more power. Alara knew what that meant. The only source strong enough is Virelli's itself, but your father controls it, not all of it. Alara placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. There is a place beneath the citadel where the world's soul sleeps untouched even by Orlan. How do you know? Because I was born there. Lila understood. You want to go home? I must, and I am coming with you. No. It is too dangerous. So is giving me the shard. Alara looked at her for a long time, then nodded. Kale stirred as if he had been waiting for this. They left the fleet hidden in the rifts and took only the Echo. The journey was long and silent. When Virelli's appeared on the view screen, it was worse than Lila remembered. The sky was black, the rivers dry, the trees turned to glass. The world was dying. Orlan had drained it too far. The O landed in the ruins of the Star Gardens, the place where Alara had fled weeks ago. Everything was ash, but beneath the central spire, a faint glow pulsed. They descended through broken floors and collapsed tunnels until they reached a chamber lined with living crystal. In the center floated a small orb of light, soft and steady. The heart of Virelli. Solara knelt before it, tears in her eyes. It is weak, but alive. Leela approached slowly. Can it help if we connect it to the array? But how? Alara looked at her, then at Kel. The dragon stepped forward and lowered his head. Alara placed her hands on his scales and began to sing. The song was old, older than cities, older than war. The orb brightened, light filled the chamber. Lila felt the shard respond stronger than ever. Then the ground shook. A voice echoed through the ruins. You dare return, King? Orlan stood in the doorway, his form wreathed in shadow, his eyes burning with fury. Alara rose. Father. This end, she laughed. You think a dead world and a stolen shard can stop me? I do not want to stop you. I want you to listen. Listen to what the silence you have made. No, he said. The silence is peace. No war, no pain, no choice. That is not peace. That is death wearing a mask. He raised his hand and the chamber trembled. You will not leave. Heracyle roared and charged. Orlan met him with a wave of force that sent the dragon crashing into the wall. Leela ran to the orb connect. It, she shouted to Elara, wove her hands through the air threads of light binding the orb to the shard. Orlan turned his gaze on Leela. You are the root of this corruption. He lunged, but Elara threw herself in the way. The king's hand struck her chest. She gasped, blood on her lips. Leela screamed. No, she grabbed the orb and pressed it to her chest. Light exploded not outward but inward into her, into the shard, into every memory, every voice, every life the silence had taken. For a moment the world stopped. Orlan froze. In that moment Leela did not attack. She reached out and showed him, not anger, not vengeance, but feelings. He showed him the woman who remembered in the empty street, the child who cried for her mother, the pilot who flew one last mission to save strangers. She showed him what the silence erased. Not just thought, but love. The king staggered back, his face twisted. Not in rage, but in something worse. Doubt you lie, he whispered to it. The orb dimmed. Elara lay still. Kale struggled to rise. Leela stood between them and the king. Take me, she said. Leave them. Orlan looked at her, then at his daughter. For the first time his voice was quiet. Why do you protect them? Because they protect each other. He said nothing, then he turned and walked away. The silence did not lift, but it paused. Leela fell to her knees beside Elara. Breathe, she whispered. Elara's eyes fluttered open. You showed him. Tried it as enough above them. Kale let out a soft rumble. The orb floated gently back to its place, weakened but alive. They returned to the echo not as victors, but as witnesses. The war was not over. But something had shifted. King Orlan had felt doubt, and doubt was the first crack in a wall of stone. In the rifts the fleet waited. Leela stood on the bridge again. This time she did not speak of weapons or plans. She spoke of memory, of names, of voices, and as she spoke the shard glowed, and far away in the dark a single mind remembered, then another and another. The silence was not gone, but it was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. The void rifts hummed with a strange energy. Not sound but presence, like the space between heartbeats where everything waited and nothing rushed. Leela sat alone on the edge of the echo's observation deck, her legs dangling over the open hatch below. The stars stretched into ribbons twisted by the rift's gravity. Kyle lay coiled nearby, his golden eyes half closed but his mind wide awake, linked to hers through the shard that now pulsed in time with her breath. Lara had not spoken in days. She sat in the meditation chamber, weaving starlight into patterns no one else could see, her hands moving slowly as if stitching the fabric of reality back together. They all knew what came next. King Orlan would not let doubt stop him for long. He would return, not with silence this time, but with fire. And they had to be ready. Leela closed her eyes and listened. The shard showed her more now. Not just memories, but possibilities. Paths branching like roots in dark soil. One path led to death. Another to surrender. But one path glowed faintly. A path not of war, but of offering. She opened her eyes. We have to go to him. Elara appeared beside her, silent as mist. You cannot mean that. I do. He is not just a king. He is a father and a prisoner of his own fear. You think he will? Listen, I think he is tired. Elara studied her face, then nodded. Then they prepared the echo. Not for battle, but for journey. No weapons, no shields, just the harmonic array, the living orb from Varelli's and Kale's song. The crew did not protest. They had seen what Leela could do. They had felt the silence break and minds return. They trusted her. Even when she led them into the heart of darkness, the dreadnought's sundered crown hung in orbit above the dead world like a tomb carved from night, its hull scarred with ancient battles, its towers silent, its guns cold. No fleet surrounded it, no warnings came. Orlan waited alone. Leela brought the echo to a stop 1,000 miles out. Then she stepped into a small shuttle. Elara followed. Kale refused to stay behind, folded his massive wings and squeezed into the cargo hold, his presence filling the small craft with warmth. They docked without resistance. The airlock opened to an empty corridor. Lights flickered, but no guards, no traps, just silence. They walked through the halls of the sundered crown, the walls lined with relics of forgotten wars. Statues of kings long turned to dust, banners faded to gray. At the end of the hall, the throne room doors stood open. King Orlan sat on a chair of black iron, his hands resting on its arms, his face older than Lila remembered. Not in years, but in sorrow. "You came," he said. "We did." To Dia to speak, he laughed, but there was no joy in it. Only weariness. "What is left to say? That you do not have to do this." He looked at her. Then at Elara. "You gave her the shard knowing this would happen. I gave her hope. Hope is a liano, it is a choice." He stood then, his form towering, his shadow swallowing the light. "I have ruled for 500 cycles. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have buried my wives, my children, my friends. The only thing that lasts is order. And silence, yes, but order without life is just a cage." He turned away. "You do not understand the weight." "Then share it." He faced her again, his eyes searching. "Why do you care?" "Because I remember what it is to be alone." He said nothing. Lila stepped forward. "Let me show you again. This time not through the shard but through touch." She held out her hand. Orlan looked at it like it was a blade. Then slowly he reached out. The moment their fingers met, the world dissolved, not in fire, not in pain, but in truth. He saw Varelli's as it once was, green and singing. He saw his daughter as a child laughing in the star garden. She saw the first human colony not as a threat but as a spark. And he saw himself not as a king, but as a man afraid of change. The vision ended. Orlan fell to his knees. Tears traced paths through the dust on his face. "What have I done?" Lila knelt beside him. "You can still fix it." "How?" Be listening. Just then the silence returned, not from him but from beyond. A new wave, darker, deeper. The Dominion had not waited. They had built their own weapon, a machine that fed on thought and spat out emptiness. It was coming. Orlan stood, his eyes clear for the first time in centuries. "Then we stop it together." Elara stepped forward. "Father." He looked at her. "I am sorry." She nodded. "It is not too late." They moved as one through the dreadnought to its core chamber where the ship's heart pulsed with stolen starlight. Lila connected the harmonic array. Elara wove the last of her starlight into its frame. Kel climbed onto the central platform, his wings spread, his throat glowing. Orlan placed his hands on the console. Not to command, but to serve. Layla stood at the center. She closed her eyes and sang not with her voice but with every memory, every name, every life. The silence had tried to erase. Kel exhaled. Cold fire filled the chamber. Light erupted not outward but through the rifts, through the stars, through every mind that still flickered. The Dominion weapon shattered. The silence broken across the galaxy. People woke in Bracken Ridge. A child cried for her mother. On a mining station, a pilot laughed at a joke. On a dead moon, a flower pushed through ash. Life returned, not because they won a war, but because they chose to. Remember, in the aftermath, Orlan did not reclaim his throne. He walked away into the wilds of Virellis to listen to his world's voice for the first time in centuries. Elara vanished into the stars. Her purpose fulfilled, her heart at peace. Kel returned to the void rifts to guard the edges of reality, his golden scales catching the light of newborn suns. Only Lila remained. She built a new home on Bracken Ridge. Not an outpost, but a school. A place where humans and those touched by the shard could learn to listen. She was no longer just Lila. She was the first of a new kind, human, but more, carrying the gift not as power, but as promise. And far above, in the cold dark, a single golden scale drifted, waiting, not for war, but for the next song to begin.